Today, we're taking a closer look at Cholamandalam Investment and Finance Company Limited's earnings call.
Cholamandlam, yeah.
A big player in India, financing pretty much everything. Vehicles, homes, you name it, they're probably involved.
Definitely a company worth understanding if you're following the Indian economy.
Absolutely. So the big question we're trying to answer today is, what does this latest earnings call tell us about Chola's performance? What's got the analysts buzzing? And what clues can we glean about India's economic future?
A lot to unpack.
Definitely. So their Q3 FY25 report, it shows loan disbursements up by 15%.
That's a healthy jump.
Yeah, and asset growth, a hefty 34% year over year. But then there's this little uptick in NPAs.
Right, those loans that are causing some concern.
Exactly.
And that's where things get interesting. It hints that maybe not all sectors in India are recovering at the same pace.
Like a little warning sign.
Could be. It definitely mirrors what we're seeing in the broader financial sector, some areas bouncing back faster than others.
Makes sense. Now, the analysts, they really seem to focus on Chola's vehicle financing business.
Yeah, they were dissecting it,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's driving the performance of different types of vehicles.
It was fascinating, almost like a car show, but with numbers.
Haha, yeah. But seriously, it all ties back to the bigger economic picture. Small and light commercial vehicles, the workhorses for so many businesses, they've taken a hit. Delivery vans, small trucks, that sort of thing.
Because of lower economic activity.
Exactly. If those vehicles aren't being used as much, it becomes tougher for borrowers to repay their loans. It's a chain reaction.
So it's not just Chola's lending decisions, it's the whole ecosystem those vehicles operate in.
Precisely.
Now, they did say capacity utilization is improving. Does that mean things are looking up for that segment?
Cholamandlam seems to think so. They're predicting better performance in the coming quarters.
Okay, good news for the small businesses. But what about the big rigs?
The heavy commercial vehicles. That's where the stress is just starting to appear.
And they're really tied to overall GDP growth, right?
Very much so, which, as we know, hasn't been spectacular for India. So that raises a question.
Is Chola a bit overexposed to that risk?
Possibly. It's something analysts are definitely watching closely.
And then there are Cholamandalam's newer ventures, specifically their consumer and small enterprise loans, CEL, and their loan against property segment, or LAP.
A lot of buzz around those, especially CEL. Cholamandalam acknowledged that the higher bad loans they're partly due to some partnerships they've relied on.
Interesting. So what are they doing about it?
Well, they're strategically moving away from those partnerships.
A bold move.
Definitely raises questions. Is this a sign they misjudged the market initially?
Or are they trying to take more control?
Could be either. Or maybe it's a reaction to pressure from investors. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Especially considering their ambitious growth targets, they're aiming for 25% overall growth.
Right, and that brings us to another layer of this story. How do they plan to hit that target while also navigating these potential CEL issues? Their strategy seems to be a combination of factors.
Like what?
Well, they're pinning a lot of hope on LAP and home loans.
Makes sense. Those sectors are usually considered pretty safe.
Relatively speaking, yes. But they're also pushing hard for operational efficiency, trying to keep costs under control.
The classic balancing act between growth and efficiency.
Exactly. A challenge we see a lot, especially in fast-growing economies like India's.
And of course, we can't forget about interest rates. How will all those fluctuations impact Cholamandalam's margins?
That's the big question.
So what's their take on it?
Well, they believe any future rate cuts will actually help their margins. A large portion of their vehicle loans are at fixed rates, so.
So they'll benefit from the lower cost of borrowing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they also acknowledge they can't just keep all those benefits.
Right, competition.
Yeah. They might have to pass some of those savings on to their borrowers to stay competitive.
It's a delicate dance.
It really is. Trying to keep profitability up, navigate those market forces, and also keep borrowers happy.
No easy feat.
Not at all.
So it feels like Cholamandalam is making this big bet on India's growth story, especially with LAP and affordable housing.
They definitely are.
But are they making the right bets?
That's the million-dollar question. And that's what we'll be exploring as we continue this deep dive. It is. It's a calculated risk, Their confidence in reaching that 25% growth target is what's interesting to me, especially when you dig into the details.
Okay, so what are the details saying?
Well, they talked about investing in their own digital platform for loan processing, so it sounds like they're not just sticking with traditional methods.
So dipping their toes into the fintech world, trying to catch up.
Maybe. Or maybe they're trying to leapfrog the competition. It's a good question, though. How effective will their tech strategy really be?
Yeah, makes you think. Every company in this space is wrestling with that, right?
Absolutely. Fintech is a
So
game changer. Not just in India, it's global. Whether Cholamandalam can actually use tech to boost efficiency, bring in new customers, and handle risk. Well, we'll have to wait and see.
definitely something for investors to watch.
For sure.
Okay, let's circle back to those NPAs for a minute. Those problematic loans, especially in the small and light commercial vehicle sector, they really highlight the point that even a strong economy has its vulnerabilities.
Right. And the analysts really pressed Cholamandalam's leadership on this. They wanted to know how they're planning to recover those bad loans, how they're managing risk going forward.
What'd they say?
Well, they talked about tightening lending standards in certain areas, stepping in earlier if borrowers show signs of trouble, and putting more effort into collections.
Sounds reasonable, but will it be enough?
That's the question. They're also really leaning into data analytics, trying to predict potential risks, building better risk management models, almost like they're trying to, see into the future.
Predicting the future is a tall order.
It is, especially with the global economy being as unpredictable as it is, which circles back to Cholamandalam's faith in India's growth, particularly in LAP and affordable housing. Are they being too optimistic? It's a gamble, that's for sure.
Well, they're not the only ones gambling on India's future. Plenty of companies are. The question is, are they making the right bets? What do you think, based on what we've talked about?
That's the question every investor has to answer for themselves. And that's what this deep dive is all about, giving you the info you need to make those decisions. What stands out to you as the biggest potential? Where are the biggest risks for Cholamandalam? And what does that tell us about where India's economy is headed?
Lots to ponder. But for now, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the competitive landscape. They're not operating in a vacuum, right? Traditional banks on one side, fintech startups popping up everywhere.
Squeezing margins, pushing players like Cholamandalam to either innovate or get left behind.
So how are they innovating? What did they say about their strategy?
Well, they mentioned offering a broader range of products, leveraging technology to make things smoother for customers, and they're targeting some niche markets where they think they have an advantage.
Classic moves, but are they enough in this environment?
Well, the financial world is always in flux. Agility is key. It takes more than just a good plan. You need to be constantly adapting, keeping an eye on the new trends.
That's true for investors, too.
Absolutely. Always be learning, always be adapting.
And then there are the regulations. How is Cholamandalam handling that constantly changing landscape?
Right. Regulations. The invisible hand guiding everything. The analysts were curious about how some of the recent changes, especially those related to capital and lending practices, might affect Cholamandalam.
Did they shed any light on that?
They said they're putting resources into systems and processes to make sure they're compliant and working directly with regulators,
Trying to stay ahead of the curve.
which is essential in a sector as tightly regulated as this. One wrong step, and you've got hefty fines, a damaged reputation, maybe even restrictions on what you can do.
It's a reminder that success in business isn't just about profits. It's about understanding and navigating the rules.
100%.
Investors should be paying attention to that too, right?
Absolutely.
Huh?
Is a company prepared to handle changes in regulations? Can they adapt, or will it trip them up?
Good questions to ask. Now, let's get back to Cholamandalam's growth strategy. They mentioned expanding into new markets, specifically rural and semi-urban areas.
Untapped potential, but also a lot of unknowns. Kind of like the Wild West of finance.
Exactly. So how are they approaching that?
Well, there's a huge demand for financial services in those underserved markets. And Cholamandalam seems to be in a decent position to take advantage of that. Strong brand, a big network of branches, they understand the local market.
But it's not just about showing up. You need to tailor your approach, right?
Right. Each region has its own culture, its own regulations, its own economic quirks. They'll have to adjust their products and strategies to fit. One size doesn't fit all.
So they need to prove they're flexible, innovative, not just relying on what worked in the past.
Exactly.
As an investor, that's something I'd be looking at closely. Can they actually execute this expansion plan?
Makes sense.
Speaking of execution, let's talk about what Cholamandalam said about building long-term customer relationships.
The classic, it's not a transaction, it's a relationship approach.
But does it actually work?
Well, in the world of finance, trust and reliability are everything. Cholamandalam emphasized their dedication to great customer service, personalized solutions, building those strong connections. They want to create a community of loyal customers who see them as a true partner.
They did mention having a high customer retention rate, a good reputation for customer satisfaction.
Right. And that's a powerful thing, especially in such a competitive market.
Loyal customers are less likely to switch to a competitor, more likely to recommend your services.
It's a positive cycle that can lead to sustainable growth.
And for investors, it's another point to consider. Are the companies you're looking at building those strong customer relationships?
It's an important one.
It's about building a brand that means something to people, something beyond just profits.
And that leads us to Cholamandalam's emphasis on financial inclusion. Another interesting point they brought up. They're really trying to make financial products and services available to those who haven't had access in the past.
It's a trend we're seeing more and more. And it's not just about altruism, right?
Exactly. It's good business.
Cholamandalam's offering products specifically designed for low-income individuals and small businesses, partnering with community organizations to improve financial literacy.
Tapping into a massive, largely untapped market, and they're doing it in a way that has a positive social impact.
A win-win, at least in theory.
Hopefully in practice, too. A win for the communities they serve, and potentially a huge win for Cholamandalam that they can pull it off.
But it's not just financial inclusion. They're also talking about sustainability.
Right? Shrinking their environmental impact, promoting diversity in their workforce, supporting community development.
The triple bottom line, as they say.
It's not just about profits anymore. Companies need to think about their impact on people and the planet.
And Cholamandalam seems to be weaving sustainability into everything they do. They get that it's not just for show, it's about attracting talent, appealing to investors, and building a business that can last.
Consumers and investors, they expect more from companies these days. They're looking for businesses that share their values, that are making the world a better place.
So Cholamandalam's trying to check all the boxes: financial performance, customer relationships, social responsibility, environmental awareness. It's a lot to handle.
It is. And now we come to the fundamental question, are their financials strong enough to back up these goals?
Well, they are reporting good revenue growth, healthy margins, and a pretty solid balance sheet.
On the surface, it looks good. But remember, the numbers are only part of the story. It's about what those numbers tell us. Why are they succeeding? What risks are hidden? Are they making smart investments? Handling their debt responsibly? These are questions investors need to be asking.
It's like peeling back the layers, trying to understand the core of their financial health. But numbers don't tell the whole story. What about their corporate governance? Are they running a tight ship?
Another crucial piece of the puzzle. Cholamandalam has a diverse board of directors with experience, they have good internal controls, and they seem committed to ethical behavior.
All good signs.
Definitely. A strong framework for corporate governance builds trust with investors and ensures the company is managed responsibly.
You need transparency, accountability, ethical conduct. These things might not show up on a balance sheet, but they're essential for lasting success.
It really does feel like they're at a crossroads, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They've got this big growth plan, pushing into new markets, embracing tech, but there are also those hurdles, the risks,
Yeah.
the things that could trip them up.
Yeah.
It's a tough balancing act, for sure. They're projecting confidence, betting big on India's growth, but at the same time, they're dealing with those rising NPAs, competition breathing down their neck, and the global economy being, well, the global economy.
Unpredictable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting, right?
Mhm.
We're not just looking at a company frozen in time. We're seeing a process unfold, a journey with all its ups and downs.
And we don't know the ending yet.
Nope.
Which is why we want to hear from you, the listeners. What are your thoughts on Cholamandalam? Do you share their optimism? Or are you a little more cautious after hearing about the potential problems?
What stood out to you from this deep dive? Anything you can use for your own investment decisions? What are the key takeaways you'll remember?
Because that's what this is all about. It's not just about us giving you information. It's about sparking your curiosity, getting you to think critically, and making your own conclusions.
Cholamandalam's story is kind of like a mini version of India's whole economic transformation. By watching what they do, their wins, their losses, we get these valuable insights into what's shaping this whole landscape.
It's always changing, too.
Constantly.
And maybe, just maybe, this deep dive will inspire you to do some exploring of your own.
Yeah, dig a little deeper into a certain sector, a company, or a whole new way of investing?
The world of finance is huge. It's fascinating, full of stories just waiting to be discovered.
So embrace your inner explorer. Ask those questions, challenge those assumptions, and keep learning.